Going into the matchup down in the desert, the biggest names to watch out for Arizona. They all come on the offensive side of the ball because that's where their best players are. All of them. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and a lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening to or watching the show. 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, those help as well. But our subscription numbers continue to look great, and I greatly appreciate all of you out there for making that possible. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Pretty swell deal. By the way, as I record this episode, I would just be remiss if I did not point out I just got done watching Thursday Night Football. Probably the worst game I've ever seen since the 2011 LSU Alabama 9-6 barn burner in Tuscaloosa with Vern Edwards and Gary Danielson on the call. I cannot remember the last time a football game was that painful. The good news is I don't think this game against Oregon, or this game against Arizona rather, featuring Oregon, is going to look quite like that. 12-9 was the final. 7 field goals, no touchdowns. So many things. I hope that's the last time I see a game like that for many, many years. It was painful, but so worth it for the Twitter memes and tweets that came afterwards, man. I tell you, there were some doozies out there. Let's get into this game with Arizona, though, because it's not going to be 12-9. Quite the opposite, because when you look at this Wildcats team that is much improved from a year ago. And if you look at just the final score of last year's game with Arizona at Autzen Stadium, you look and say, oh, well, Oregon won comfortably. And if you're saying that, then you didn't watch the game because that game was competitive going into the fourth, and Oregon pulled away with multiple late interceptions and Arizona's offense eventually running out of steam. The difference is not just that this game is being played in Tucson rather than in Eugene, but this is not an Arizona offense that is going to run out of steam and have a limited quarterback the way they did last year. I don't even remember who it was, but it was ugly. It was just they did not have a good quarterback situation. But it's not like that anymore for Arizona. Jayden is down there, and just like you would imagine, as he did for the last couple of years at Washington State, he's slinging it around the field. And that's what they do best. They're capable of running the ball. Jedd Fisch, he comes from the NFL. You know, he was on the Patriots staffs and the Rams, I think, for a little bit. And he's the play caller for that offense. He wants to run the football. Like, fundamentally, it's a pretty pro style approach to calling plays, different than what you're going to see at Oregon, whereas Kenny Dillingham's quote unquote pro style is let's put our guys in space, let's put them in one-on-one situations and let them go make a play. Jedd Fisch will run some jet sweeps, will be under center a lot more often. And fundamentally, he does want to run the ball. But I think what Arizona, if they want to have success in this game against Oregon, has to do is throw the ball probably 65-35. And I'm it might even be 75 to 25 because Oregon has not been letting anyone run the football. Stanford couldn't, the Cougars couldn't, the other Cougars couldn't, Washington State and BYU both. Nobody could run the football. And I think the Cardinal ended up with over 100 yards rushing, but a lot of that came in garbage time. Oregon's starting unit is holding their opponents under 100 yards rushing over the last several weeks. And I didn't check the Eastern Washington stats. I imagine they're pretty similar. It's not a team you can really run on. DJ Johnson's been playing well. Brandon Dorlus is a beast. Jordan Riley and Casey Rogers are really productive. I like both of them. They're doing some really good things. Justin Flo, we'll see if he actually plays. But Oregon's linebackers, Noah Sewell, Keith Brown, Jeffrey Bossa, a lot of guys we've seen rotate in there have been good stopping the run. But Arizona has to come out if they want to be productive and exploit Oregon, where they are yet to prove that they can consistently be solid defensively. And that's the quick screen game. And we saw Washington State up until that pick six. I don't think Oregon allowed one of those tunnel screens to go for fewer than 7 yards. Now, you can't call it every other play or the Ducks will make an adjustment quicker, but I expect that to be a feature of this Arizona offense. And Jed Fish, by all accounts, looks to be a pretty good offensive mind. He is scoring points at Arizona. They put up, I think, 43 against Colorado last week. No, the Buffs are not very good. They put up 31 on the road against Cal. That's not bad. They put up 38 at San Diego State, who's not that good this year, but that's on the road. And this game is at home. This is an Arizona team that, if they're going to pull an upset, they're going to score points. And the quick passing game, the way Georgia, who obviously has better athletes than Arizona, torched Oregon in that first week, they weren't doing anything that fancy. It was just a lot of quick hitters, a lot of stuff that was on the perimeter, made Oregon try and tackle in space. I think the open field tackling's improved since then. I don't think it's improved to the point where if you told me they threw screen passes at the rate of Marcus Arroyo circa 2019 with Justin Herbert as his quarterback, which is about 1 in every 4 passing plays, I don't think Oregon would be able to stop it consistently. The Ducks got a break with Mace Funa making that play on the tunnel screen and picking off Cam Ward and running it back. That's not repeatable. What Oregon needs to be able to do defensively in this game, and where Arizona presents a challenge, is they've got the weapons on the perimeter to hit these tunnel screens, the quick hitters, and let their guys go out and make plays in space. And Oregon has not demonstrated an ability to stop that consistently. Now, Stanford didn't exploit that as much as they should have. Washington State certainly did, but BYU did not. They were without their two best receivers, and Georgia did. The two teams that were really keen on screen passes and quick hitters were Washington State and Georgia. They scored a combined 90 points against the Ducks. Now, some of that was a pick six from Bo Nix, sure, but you get the point I'm making here. That's where the Ducks have been vulnerable. And the reason Arizona should do this is because of the guys they have. And Jayden Delore is the quarterback. I'll get to him in a little bit, but there are 3 wide receivers. You're going to hear from all of them on Saturday, Duck fans. It is just a reality. There is no way that Oregon's going to be able to keep these guys entirely quiet. One of them they could. One of them they could. But the 3 wide receivers, one of them, perhaps a familiar name, Tetairoa McMillan. We call him T-Mac because that's a lot easier to say, and I avoid potentially butchering his name and feeling bad. T-Mac is a good player. True freshman. He and Delora have nice chemistry. He made some sick catches last week. High 4-star recruit, highest rated in Arizona football history. He looks and plays the part. He will be involved in the passing game. You probably know that name. Here are the other 2. Jacob Cowing and Dorian Singer. Singer was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school. Really nice player. Good athlete, good hands, very balanced wide receiver. Cowing transferred from UTEP. He's a little bit smaller, he's quicker, he's nimble, and he is the perfect guy to throw a screen pass to. He's like if Jalen Red were a little bulkier. I think that's what you see in Jacob Cowing, is he can run more the route tree, I think, than Jalen Red can. Jalen Red could, or like Seven McGee right now. But he's going to line up primarily in the slot. You're going to get him the ball in space. You could give him a jet sweep. You could give him an end around. You could throw a screen pass to him. You do a lot of things there. Those 3 names, Dorian Singer, T-Mac, and Jacob Cowing. Those are the big names Oregon's got to be able to stop. And it's not going to be easy because these are not good weapons for Arizona. It's not in that context. These are just good weapons in the Pac-12. You'd be hard-pressed outside of USC to find a receiving core better than Arizona's. And yes, that includes Oregon's, who I like a lot. There's a lot of depth there. But those top 3 guys, I say, are comparable to just about every receiving core outside of USC in the Pac-12. How can Oregon stop them? I'll tell you who will be important in that sense after I remind you this episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college football this season. They've got a really easy to play format. All you got to do is go in there, sign up, make an account, and then start picking player props. You can pick over and under for all your favorite players. Bo Nix, Bucky Irving, Troy Franklin, everybody is in there. Just pick 2 to 5 players across any team. Doesn't have to just be the Ducks, it could be anybody else. Decide if they will finish higher or lower than the total that is there. It's an easy to play format that's available in over 30 states, and it's one of the easiest fantasy games to play out there, and you can win cold hard cash in just a single game. Sign up with the promo code Locked On, one word, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. It's that easy. Go to underdogfantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store, Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, one word, to get in on the college football pick'em action today. So how's Oregon going to be able to stop these guys? And they have my utmost concern. I'm not worried about Arizona's ground game. Jayden can run a little. I don't think that's really a big feature of the offense. They might pull it out from time to time, but overall, it'll be kind of mano a mano pro style runs, and you got to watch out for the occasional end around or jet sweep or stuff like that. But so far, Oregon's giving me nothing to worry about with regards to stopping the run going into this game. So I feel good there. But these 3 guys, they're Delores' favorite targets. They are all in the upper third of the conference statistically in receiving yards, because that's how often they throw the ball. It's how effective they've been, and that's the sort of players they are. And they have really high level talent. I honestly think Oregon's top 3 receivers this year probably. If you're looking at just pure wideouts, Troy Franklin certainly number 1, probably Coda number 2, and Chris Hudson number 3. Yeah, I think that's comparable to T-Mac, Singer, and Cowing. I think it's directly comparable as a matter of fact. Cowing compared to Chris Hudson, I think that's also a pretty good comp for him. And he's got that smaller build, but he's shifty, he's physical, he's got good speed. But how's Oregon going to go about stopping these guys? I think what you have to do if you're Tosh Lupoi is look at T-Mac, who's a big-bodied receiver. That's what makes him so enticing. He's got good speed, great hands, good route runner, but he's got a long frame, and that's ripe for a one-on-one matchup with Gonzo all day long. And I love Gonzo. I think everybody does at this point, and I think most Duck fans are understanding why I was so high on him coming into the year. He has lived up to the hype I set for him in a big way. He is really, really good. I think he can match up with Singer as well. Cowing is a different body type, and Cowing typically is going to play in the slot. So I think that's arguably the toughest guy for Oregon to match up with. Singer can as well. But Gonzo on the outside, one-on-one with T-Mac, T-Mac might make a play or two, but overall, I'm going to trust Gonzo, who looks like an NFL-ready corner, over a true freshman. A talented true freshman, but I think you can at least minimize him having, a big-time breakout 100-plus yard game, and you could keep him, well under 50 yards if Gonzo shadows him for most of the day. The other 2 guys, it's a lot trickier because they'll move around a little more. T-Mac's almost exclusively a guy who's going to line up on the outside. We got that kind of Dante Thornton build, and he's, just a big body X or Z receiver who's going to be, all the way out wide, boundary receiver, deep shots, fade routes, all that sort of stuff. I think that's why Gonzo will see a lot of him. But the other 2 guys, you can move around a little more. And I don't know if you can shadow him with a guy like Triquez Bridges. I don't think that Bridges has showed that level of capability. But here's the other thing. Oregon's out there running a 4-2-5, right? 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. So let's say you got 4 starters on the defensive line: DJ Johnson, Brandon Dorless, Rogers, and I don't know, throw Taimani in there, whoever they're starting at a given slot. Mace Funa, probably the other edge. Let's assume, because it seems to happen every week, that Justin Flo doesn't play. And so you got Noah Sewell, Jeffrey Boss there. Okay, so those are your 2 linebackers. The 5 DBs on the back end. Brian Addison's back there, Jamal Hill, Bennett Williams, the 2 corners. I wonder, of those bodies, you're going to have to play man-to-man coverage at some point. You can't run zone forever, and you want to play man-to-man from time to time, or at least pretty often, I'd say, so that you can allow Gonzo to just go to work on T-Mac, which I think he can. But where that leaves you vulnerable is if you've got a 4 wide set and you're running man-to-man coverage, and let's say T-Mac is out wide over here, covered by Gonzo, and someone else is their X receiver, and then Singer and Cowing are in the slots. I worry a lot about who's matching up with those two guys one-on-one. Bennett Williams, I liked what I saw in coverage from him a lot last week. These guys are better athletes than what Stanford had, and Bennett Williams is a bigger body, right? He's kind of that safety mold. Jamal Hill, same thing. Jamal Hill's almost big enough. I think he is big enough, frankly, to be a linebacker. And are you going to let Jeffrey Bossa go out there and try and cover him? Those are the matchups I'm worried about. And I wonder if we won't see more of a Dante Manning or maybe a Jaleel Florence. Maybe we'll see kind of how that plays out. But those are the guys Oregon's been using in coverage in that 4-2-5 scheme. But if you have those two athletes, I know Jamal Hill can't keep up with either of them. Bennett Williams, maybe. I think that's a maybe. But again, are you just going to take yourself out of man-to-man concepts or have to double one of those guys because you don't have someone who's nimble enough, who's agile enough? And so I wonder if they won't, rather than having one of those 5 DBs on the field in their base package be someone who is, rather than being prone to stop the run, like a Jamal Hill, Bennett Williams, and Bennett's more balanced. But I wonder if you don't keep Brian Addison out there as free safety because that's what they have shown throughout the year. Take Jamal Hill off the field a little more and put in a Dante Manning or whoever is up next on the cornerback depth chart, because you need guys who are going to be able to run with these dudes. And Jamal Hill, I'll take him covering a running back who's not too speedy or a tight end. But one-on-one with a wide receiver, that's advantage Arizona. And I think that could be problematic going into it. So those are the sorts of names you got to watch. How often are we in coverage? What sort of coverages is I don't know, Tosh Lupoy going to be running? English is too hard. Throughout the course of this game, that chess match and slowing down those 3 wide receivers. If you keep all of them under 100 yards, Oregon should win this game, no problem. But those are the biggest threats that you've got on the other side. And it just happens to be in the area where we have the most questions about Oregon defensively. Let's get over to Jayden DeLaura, who I've always liked. I've talked about him extensively over on Locked On Pac-12. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the most mobile, but you watch him go out there. He's productive. He's a gamer. He's a leader, and he makes throws, and he's pretty accurate. Now, he can do all those things, and we've seen that for the last couple of seasons, so Oregon fans should understand what to expect there. But what we've seen from him this year is he's made some really good throws. He's made some really amazing plays. He's also had some boneheaded plays. And if Oregon does not force at least one interception in this game, I will be disappointed. I will be disappointed because if you can't pick off Jayden DeLaura once as Oregon's defense, and I know their offense is vastly improved, as a team, they're vastly improved, right? Hunter Echols, former USC, a 4-star recruit who was, I think, graded as a 3-star transfer. He's their best defensive player coming off the edge, but I don't worry about that too much because Oregon's offensive line is there. When you look at a guy like Jayden DeLaura, if Oregon doesn't have an interception from him by the time Saturday night comes to a close and Oregon's walking off the field, hopefully victorious in the desert for the first time since 2015, that means they didn't get pressure on him because he doesn't have the biggest arm. He's not a spectacular athlete. He's good enough in both of those areas. But he has been turnover prone this year. And every time, just about every time he's throwing an interception, it's because of the pressure. And Oregon's pass rush has stepped it up big time in the last couple weeks. Cam Ward was sacked a couple times and was running around a lot. Tanner McKee was sacked on many occasions and was under pressure pretty often to limit that Cardinal offense, which, I don't love to begin with, but still, Oregon's defense was a reason why they struggled in that game in particular. This is another opportunity. That Arizona offensive line, I don't have a great feel for how it is, but I know it can't be to the standard of where Oregon's defensive line has been setting this year. I mean, DJ Johnson, Brandon Dorless for sure will get drafted this year, and DJ Johnson likely going to be able to find his way onto an NFL roster. I would think, just because of the body type that he's got. But everybody else who's been playing well, Casey Rogers, notably among them, Mace Funa has had a couple of nice sequences getting after quarterbacks. You've got to be able to against this Arizona team. Doesn't matter that you're on the road. And remember, Oregon's defense is yet to put together a great performance away from Autzen Stadium. BYU, they were great. Stanford, they were great. Washington State, up and down. Georgia, of course, an absolute disaster. So this is the chance for the Oregon defense to show that they can play well away from Autzen Stadium, and they should. They should in this game, because though Arizona has improved a lot, and they've already hit over their win total in 2022. It was 2.5. They're already at 3 wins. Good for them. They still have a ways to go. And the areas where Oregon can dominate this game, and hopefully will be able to, but at least the potential's there for it, is in the trenches on both sides of the ball. That offensive line should be able to run the ball at will with all the running backs and Bo Nix. The defensive line should be able to shut down the Arizona run game and create a little bit of havoc for Jayden DeLora and that Arizona Wildcats offense. Will it be tough because I anticipate them utilizing the quick hitters and the screen game? Yes. That always makes it tough on a defensive line. It can be frustrating and just annoying when, maybe you make a great move, but the ball's already out of his hands. I think Jed Fish will use that a pretty good amount because he's probably looked at the film and seen, yeah, Oregon is not defending these screen passes particularly well. Hopefully Tosh Lupoy, Dan Lanning and company can make some adjustments on that front. But when Jayden DeLora drops back to pass, when it's a 3-5 step drop or play action, whatever the case may be, if you can get some pressure on him, he will try to do too much at some point, especially in a game that he's getting up for against Oregon. Go watch the game against Mississippi State, where Arizona put up a respectable performance. They were in it for about 2.5, 3 quarters, and then the Bulldogs pulled away at the end because they just have more talent. I think that's what could happen in this game, very realistically for Oregon. Same sort of situation. Arizona held up. They were fighting, they were clawing, they weren't out of it. And then all of a sudden, Mississippi State in the third quarter and fourth strung a couple scores together, got a couple stops and a turnover, and then the game was over. But they forced Jayden DeLora into bad situations. And if you put pressure on him, he has a tendency to make bad throws. That's something he's still working on as a quarterback. So with all the strides in the last couple weeks, Oregon's pass rush has made. If they come out in this game and give Jayden DeLora a clean pocket, number one, that's dangerous for the outcome of the game. But number two, it'd be disappointing based on the progress they seem to have made with regards to their prospects going forward. Because this is still a team in Arizona that is a year or two away from being an 8 to 9 win Pac-12 team potentially. And it's an offensive line that this front seven should be able to get after. Last thing before I go for the week, and I will be watching only at the end, most likely. I've got a broadcast that's happening during the Oregon game, so I'll kind of be checking in and out and such. So hopefully you can keep me posted in some way on Twitter. Kind of tweet at me what you're seeing. Oregon doing this, Oregon not doing that. That sort of stuff is helpful. You don't have to, but I know some of you end up tweeting at me anyway, which I'm totally on board with. Like, I'm there with you, Duck fans. We're all going through these games together. But the game that I'm calling starts about an hour before the Oregon game, so hopefully I'll be able to catch at least the end of it live and such. But for Oregon to win big, and I think the potential for them to win by more than 2 touchdowns and cover that 13-point spread is more likely than it is that Oregon loses this game. Doesn't mean I think this is a walkover. This is not Colorado. They just beat Colorado 43-20. This is not a Cal team that I'm not super high on, though they appear to be, not incompetent this year with Justin Wilcox. Though they never are, I suppose. They were pretty bad coming in Autzen last year. But anyway, that's a discussion for a different day. If Oregon's going to go in and win this game big, there are 2 things they got to do. Number one, run the football. Because Arizona should not be able to stop them unless they make radical changes or they put 8 guys in the box, which wouldn't be wise because then you'd have Chris Hudson over here, Chase Cota here, and Troy Franklin right there, basically in one-on-one situations. That's not in Arizona's best interest either because they, have had some decent moments defensively this year, but they're still building on that side of the ball. Oregon should be able to run it similarly to the way they did against Stanford. Hopefully, that's something that's going to be able to travel and help this offense settle in. Hopefully, they execute in the red zone. I think that's another thing that can help them get an early lead in this game. But the biggest thing you got to do, it's not the craziest environment to play in down there. I know they call it the Zona Zoo. They can be loud, but it's not a Salt Lake City or a Seattle or anything like that. Or, when it's actually a full stadium, Corvallis or anything of that sort. There will be a good number of people at the game. And I think you got to take the crowd out of it early, because that's the big thing that I think has gotten Oregon to stumble in the past down in the desert. It's been a hostile environment, and the crowd's been into it. The crowd's excited because Oregon's good and everyone wants to upset the Ducks. And that's the way it is. Pressure's a privilege. That's a great thing for Oregon to have to deal with. You're getting team's best shot basically every time you go and play. But if you get a big play early and you just spot yourself 10 points, whether it's an interception, an explosive pass, a big run, something like that, try and take the wind out of the crowd's sails early in this game. And I think that's what will allow Oregon to continue to have success. And then the other way the crowd can't get into it is if you're just running the ball the way they did against Stanford. I know that was at home, so the fans were of course loving it and such. But if you come in and run for 300 plus yards and you're running for however many yards per carry, I don't remember what the actual figure was, but it was very very high. It's demoralizing for a fan base to watch, because when you do get in those 3rd and 3 situations, the fans go, oh, they're just going to run the ball, pick up the first down. Then you run the ball, pick up the first down, right? It's imposing for a defense to have to go up against that sort of attack, but it's also demoralizing for the fans. So I think you got to find a way to get them out of it early. Because if you come in and, Bo Nix throws an interception on the first possession, Oregon can still win the game, but it's a lot harder when the fans have that sort of juice and that sort of hope and optimism. You want to take that away from them. Final game prediction here. I'm sure you've all been waiting the last couple episodes that I've talked about the Wildcats for this, but I think Oregon gets it done. I think it's a little tough early because the red zone situation has not been figured out offensively, right? It wasn't perfect against Stanford at home. I don't expect it to suddenly be amazing on the road. I would love it if it were, but I think Oregon will let Arizona hang around a little bit, and it'll look a lot like that Mississippi State game where final score makes it look like more of a blowout than it actually was. But I think Oregon get it done here. 38, I'll go 24. I'll go 20. I think 38-20. Zona struggles to run the ball. Oregon moves it well. Bo Nix gets back over, I think over 230 yards passing in this game, but I expect Oregon to run the ball quite a bit. I appreciate everyone listening. Enjoy the game. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. Go Ducks.